Have you heard of the spotlight effect? Some people imagine that when they go out, everyone notices them and criticises them. And they're so concerned about this that they'll spend hours getting ready to make sure that they look just so. And there's others who imagine that the whole world really needs to hear what they have to say. And they think that if everything will be fine if only everyone would listen to them. But it's all imaginary. The reality is, no one gives a... Hello, it's Jim Lynn. Welcome back to the workshop. You know, when I used to be a captain, I'd quite often get notified that I'd have a VIP about to travel on my flight. And my stock response was always the same. I'd say, I didn't know my mum was going to be flying with us today. Yeah, I might get a few sniggers. But yeah, anyway, it'd be some sports person or pop star. But I always think this person's a little bit confused because they're imagining that because they're really good at something, they're well known for it, that somehow that makes them important. But that's the spotlight effect. In reality, in the grand scheme of things, they're no more or less important than anyone else. But to them, what they do is important. And to them, it's vitally important. And because it consumes so much time and takes so much effort to do what they do, it's easy to see why they can become deluded to the extent that they demand VIP status. Now, YouTube content creators are another lot that think that what they do is vitally important. But again, in the grand scheme of things, no, it's not. It's not important. But to them it is. So if you haven't been able to upload anything for a while, if you're not careful, you can really start to worry about it. You worry that you'll lose all your subscribers, you worry that you'll get demonetized, and of course you just worry what people will think of you. But again, it's all in the mind. And we just have to keep reminding ourselves that no one actually cares that much, the spotlight isn't on us, and our audience isn't that fickle. But what I have noticed is that when a favourite creator of mine hasn't posted for a while, they'll quite often upload an update video. And I like that because from that I learned that it isn't just me that finds this bizarre occupation something like wading through treacle in the teeth of a blizzard. So what has been going on? Problems began just after the last video in March. An issue with the fabric of the workshop had been growing, literally, for a while before then. Have a look at this. Well, first of all, I think you'll agree that this looks more like a junkyard than a workshop, and that's exactly what it is. You see, we've been building an extension on our house for the past couple of years, or even more I think, and when we demolished half the house we had no utility area, so there's the tumble dryer and a washing machine in the top corner there, and all the junk that we didn't skip, the stuff that we couldn't decide whether we wanted to skip it or not, ended up in my workshop because there's no other place. Look at these corners, particularly this one. For a few months whilst doing videos, I've noticed some black mildew appearing around the edges of these corners. There were some items in here, and this scene is only revealed after I've taken a lot of things out of there to have a look. And as I pan the camera round, you can see that I've removed some other items and found even more of it. I pulled away some boxes of books that had been sitting here, and I found a little bit of staining on the floor where they'd been sitting and partially up the walls, and the backs of the boxes were damp and a couple of the books inside had mould on them. So to get a really good assessment of the extent of the problem and to make any subsequent remedial action more manageable, I decided I needed to completely clear the entire floor of stuff and also get all that shelving off the walls. I left most of the wood rack in place, just taking away the bottom two shelves, mainly because I've nowhere else to keep the wood that's going to keep it as dry as it is. And from that I found that the problem was bad where items had been sitting on the floor, such as here, but it's worse where very little had been actually touching the floor, such as underneath the lower shelf. There wasn't anything in there. And so I think the issue is that moisture-laden air, most likely from me breathing and the washing machine and tumble dryer being on a lot, well, that moisture-laden air has found its way into these quiet corners and settled on the cold floor. and with no airflow to dry it out, it's just caused the damp. Now, although it looks really bad, it is in fact only on the surface, thankfully, and it is quite a straightforward cleanup operation. This area here is actually relatively clear. Now this is good because this is where my desk was. There was nothing under my desk. So this tells me that it isn't water coming up from underneath or anything like that that's causing the problem. It is just moisture-laden air settling into darkened corners. And this corner we're coming up to now, well, that's where the laundry machines were sitting, tumble dryer on the left and the large black patch, that's where the washing machine was. And underneath this area, various bins and things like that. So when I realised the extent of the problem, I didn't start to clean right away. I felt pretty overwhelmed and actually sick fed up. So I shut the door and I just left it for a week or so. Now, from a practical point of view, I needed to come up with a plan of action, and that takes time anyway. So the plan I came up with to sort this problem out had 3 steps. Step 1 was scrubbing the floor with just ordinary kitchen floor cleaner, and I scrubbed the walls with sugar soap. Now this got all the ordinary dirt off, and most of the mould and staining as well. And then step 2 was mopping the floor with diluted bleach. And in this case, I just sloshed it all over, make sure it got into all the nooks and crannies and all around the edges, and I just left it to dry. And after that, I came in and I painted the walls with neat, thick bleach with a big paintbrush. The idea here is to kill every last spore as far as possible. And the final step was to target stubborn spots on the floor with neat bleach. Now here, for instance, there is some black dots, but that's not mould. That's the shadow of the grit that's on this floor. I made the big mistake of putting a gritty paint onto the floor, and it didn't work. It just collects the muck, and it's difficult to clean. It shreds mops, for instance. And you can see here that I'm doing the workshop 1/2 at a time. Now the reason there's still so much junk in the workshop, even though I'm trying to clean it, is I've just nowhere else to put it. I filled up the garage, I filled up the other shed, and the other option was to go through it all and junk things, but I didn't have time for that at the time. I wanted to get this done. But you can see here that it looks really good now. If you think how dirty all this was before, this has turned out really well. I'm really pleased with it, and it still is. As of making this video, it's still very clear. There's no sign of the mould coming back, which is the important thing. Now, in case you're wondering, yeah, I used gloves, goggles, and a fumes mask. Absolutely, there's no way I'm going to breathe bleach fumes. To get everything back up and running again, I had to sit down and think exactly what I needed to bring back. Bear in mind that most of the stuff that was in here was junk just being stored whilst we built the extension. So, for instance, I brought back these boxes full of books because they can't stay in the cold, damp garage. There's things like toolboxes, there's a Marshall bass amp, there's my dad's old cine projector, things that can't stay in the garage just like the books. These black boxes with the yellow handles, they contain things that are essential to the workshop. These large light grey boxes contain all the model kits, and again they're back here for the same reason as the books. I've also invested in some proper lighting, which I'm still getting to grips with. Unfortunately, at the other end, the laundry machines have had to come back. This is whilst I get the time to make the space for them in the extension. But at least I'm able to keep the working areas relatively clean and free of clutter, so I can get on with things. So the workshop is back in working order, and it has been since mid-April. But this workshop issue hasn't been the worst thing to happen to us, not by a long shot. You see, in the very day that I moved all these boxes back in here, my wife discovered that she had a detached retina. Now the next day she did have a successful emergency operation to fix it, but we weren't prepared for just how much our lives were about to crash into the buffers. You see, the recovery was much more intense than we were expecting. Certainly took a significant physical and emotional toll, and I decided that I had no choice but to suspend all my activities to make sure that I was available, certainly for the first few weeks. And then at the beginning of May, I got shingles. In fact, it's the reason for this beard, because I had this horrible blistery rash that went right up the side of my face and over the back of my neck, and it took weeks to get over. So I couldn't shave even if I wanted to. But that was both of us absolutely floored, and we were unable to do very much at all except just try and look after each other as best we could, and that was certainly right into the middle of June. Now, these issues took a much bigger toll on us both than we expected, probably due to our age, but there seemed to be a significant mental price to be paid, and the weeks just seemed to come and go without anything getting done. And sometimes I think that you just have to accept that. You know, it is what it is, and you just have to wait. But now, approaching the end of July, we're both very much on the mend. And my wife eventually had to have a new lens put in as well, and that significantly improved her vision, which is certainly a plus point. And for me, I was able to get the new lights and get a second camera and buy out some time here and there to learn about the lights and get more deeper into the depths of the camera and figure out how to use it a lot better. So there's a plus side there, and hopefully that will translate into better quality videos in the future. But unfortunately, I can't really promise another episode anytime soon, probably not until September, which is actually only about 5 weeks away. And the reason for that is that all the problems we've had means that a lot of external works that I need to do to the extension before the autumn comes, that needs to get done. And there are other commitments that I've got that have been put in the back burner, and I need to tackle them in the very near future as well. But rest assured everyone, whilst there's no spotlight, I'll do what I can, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.